Grade 2 students, how are you? Our lesson today is axis of symmetry. We are going to start with examples from our real life. We have the book, clapping hands, butterfly, and mirror. They are equal parts are identical. Look at the book. This part is equal and identical means similar to this part. And my hands, if I am clapping, this hand is similar to this hand. As for the butterfly, this part is exactly equal to this part and similar to it in shape, in colors. And if I stand in front of a mirror, I can see my body exactly the same. So this part is identical, means similar to this part. Here we have some shapes. We want to draw a line that cut the shape into equal parts. We have a circle, rectangle, hectagon, triangle, and star. Let us start with the circle. This line cut the circle into two equal and identical parts. And this line cut the rectangle into two equal and similar parts. And this line cut the hectagon into two equal parts and similar. This line cut the triangle into two equal and similar parts as well. And as for the star, this part is equal and similar to this part. We fold these shapes according to the straight line. We notice that the two parts are equal and identical. So we say that this straight line is the axis of symmetry of this figure. Let us take an example. We have this rectangle. This straight line cut the rectangle into two parts that are equal and identical. This part is equal and identical to this part. So we call this straight line the axis of symmetry, which is our lesson today. We can draw more than one axis of symmetry of some figures. Let us see. For example, this two-ended arrow, it has two axes of symmetry. As for the circle, it has many axes of symmetries. The rhombus, it has two axes of symmetry that cut it into identical and equal parts. And finally, the plus sign, it has one, two, three, four axes of symmetry. You can check by folding each figure and see how the axis of symmetry cut it into identical and equal parts. We can draw an axis of symmetry in case of letters also. Let us see. Here we have the alphabet letters. Letters A, B, C, D, E, they have one axis of symmetry. F and G, for example, they don't have axis of symmetry. Since if I draw a straight line, it will not cut it into two identical and equal parts. For example, H, I, and O, they have two axes of symmetry. If you want, you can write these letters on a paper at home and try to fold the paper and see the axis of symmetry for each letter. Is this line an axis of symmetry? Yes or no? Let us see. We have this pencil and this line. We can see that this part is not similar to this part. So this line is not an axis of symmetry. We have this sun and this line. we can see that this part is not similar to this part, so this line is not an axis of symmetry as well. We have this half an apple and this line. If we look, we can see that this part is identical and equal to this part. So this line is an axis of symmetry. As for this flower and this line, we can see that this line cut the flower into two equal and identical parts. Here we have an eye, for example, and here we have an eye. Here we have a leaf, and here we have a leaf. And finally, this tree and this line. This line does not cut the tree into two equal and identical parts. So, no, it's not an axis of symmetry. How can I continue drawing a figure using symmetry? I have this part. I'm going to draw its second part on the other side of the axis of symmetry. First, I mark all vertices with points. Second, I'm going to plot each point by point. I start with the first point. It's already on the axis of symmetry, so I keep it. As for this point, I have to move 1, 2 squares to the left. So in order to draw it on the other side, I have to move 1, 2 squares to the right and plot it. This point is already on the axis of symmetry, so I keep it in its place. As for this point, I have to move 1, 2 squares away from the axis of symmetry from the left. Then I have to move 1, 2 squares to the right away from the axis of symmetry and plot a point. And finally, I have to join the points together. Similarly, I'm going to draw this other part of the figure. I mark the vertices, the first step. Second, I plot them on the other part with respect to the axis of symmetry. This point and this point are already on the axis of symmetry, so I will not plot them. They will stay in their place. As for this point, it's away 1, 2 squares to the left, so it will be away from the axis of symmetry 1, 2 squares to the right. Then I put it, and at the end I join the points all together. And this is your homework. Practice it on your book. Stay home, stay safe all.